When I walked into the living room, it was as if I was invisible to them. They just ignored me. Laughing and watching TV, my daughter Marcia suddenly turned around and said, "Wow. You're here? I totally didn't notice. You're just like a ghost." Marcia, chuckling, aimed her mobile phone at me. Seconds later, the sound of the shutter confirmed she had taken my picture. "Dad, I got a ghost photo." Indeed. It came out really well. Cedric, my husband, remarked with a half smile as he looked my way. "Hey, ghost, say something." "Ghosts can't speak, you know." "That's true." They both got a kick out of making fun of me. After their laughter subsided, Cedric gave me a cold look. "You really are a buzzkill. Just disappear, you're in the way." Echoing Cedric's harsh words, Marcia joined in. "Yeah. Disappear quickly." By then, I was beyond feeling sad or angry. It all just seemed so absurd, I began to laugh. As I laughed, shaking my shoulders, they looked at me with pure disgust. "What's so funny that you're laughing alone? It's weird. Can't you just go somewhere else?" Facing their scorn, I said with a smile, "Fine. I'll disappear as you wish." My name is Olivia. I'm a 47-year-old office worker. Living with me are my husband Cedric, who is 3 years my junior, and our high school daughter, Marcia. They both lively and cheerful, but I've always been the opposite within our family, inherently shy. Moreover, my body is abnormally thin and frail for an adult woman, due to a certain illness. This combination of being overly shy and too thin has made me disliked by them for years. Cedric had nothing to say about my personality or body shape until Marcia was born. He was kind and passionate about his work, but once Marcia became aware, he began to dislike me and joined in insulting me. Whenever I come near Cedric and Marcia, "You're too skinny, it's disgusting. Like a skeleton. So gloomy." They hurl such awful insults at me every chance they get. It seems they don't think of me as family. Just a stranger living with them. Or maybe something less than a stranger. I used to be brighter and closer to a standard weight, but the reason I became as I am today goes back 30 years. Now, I'm introverted and struggle to express my emotions, but back in my school days, I had a decent number of friends and led a fulfilling life. My personality changed during my junior year, after a certain event. It happened when I was 17, the same age Marcia is now. Back then, I hit it off with a boy in my class because we enjoyed talking. His name was Polly. We were seated next to each other, which quickly closed the distance between us. Polly was bright and athletic, a popular figure in our class. While we enjoyed chatting, other classmates would tease, asking, "Are you two dating?" Still, I don't know if he ever had romantic feelings for me. But I liked Polly. Even if he didn't think anything special of me, I wanted to confess my feelings before graduating high school. At that time, I valued the moments of fun conversations with Polly more than a confession. However, being close with Polly, the class favorite, apparently made me the target of other girls' jealousy. Though nothing direct happened, I gradually started to be avoided by the girls in my class. Friends I thought I had began ignoring me, leading to my isolation at school. Since then, I became afraid to get close to the opposite sex and lost confidence in myself. This is how I became the introvert I am today. Polly's attitude towards me changed completely, and even when I mustered the courage to speak to him, I got no response. One day after school, I accidentally overheard Polly talking with friends. "Dude, you used to be so close to her, but you hardly talk now. What happened?" "Well, she suddenly became so gloomy, you know? Just felt bad vibes." I thought talking to her would bring me down too. True, she's become pretty invisible and left out. Hearing them talk behind my back was a shock. Depressed, I eventually developed an eating disorder, unable to eat. I lost nearly 10 kilos in 3 months, becoming even more emaciated. Gradually, my parents also started to keep only the necessary minimum interaction with me. I think they were at a loss with what to do with me. I tried not to burden my parents and lived as quietly as possible. The rest of my high school life was miserable. Somehow, I managed to get into college, and with no friends or romantic relationships, I graduated from high school. Since commuting from my parents' house to college would take over 2 hours one way, and our relationship was strained, I took this as an opportunity to move out and start living on my own. I hoped that changing environments would help me recover, but college, with even more people than high school, was not a comfortable place. With my inability to engage in conversations, no one really took the initiative to talk to me. I spent a lonely 4 years in college, then became a working adult. For my job, I chose a place even further away from my hometown. Since moving out, I only visit home 2 or 3 times a year. The company I joined had roles like sales that required going outside, but during the interview, I honestly spoke about my illness and personality, expressing a desire for office work. The company respected my wishes and made various accommodations for me. I have always had a high concentration level and am good at office tasks. My attitude towards work has been recognized by my superiors and colleagues. Unlike my high school and college days, my colleagues at work showed understanding towards my personality and eating disorder. Blessed with a good work environment, I even managed to build good friendships with some colleagues by hanging out with them occasionally. However, when it comes to romantic relationships, I thought it would be impossible for me in the future. I had become able to talk to men at work, but to be honest, I still felt nervous. I had given up on the idea of not just dating, but getting married altogether. But in my 3rd year at the company, fully adjusted to the workplace, a new male colleague who joined that year began to make strong advances towards me. That person was Cedric, who would later become my husband. Olivia, are you free this weekend? Would you like to have dinner together if you are? I'm sorry, this weekend is a bit. Is that so? Understood. I'll ask you again another time. From the first time we met, Cedric never once brought up my appearance or personality. He is cheerful and takes his work seriously. I gradually found myself drawn to him, but due to past experiences, I hesitated to take the next step. Cedric's advances continued for about a year. We had occasionally met outside for shopping or movies, but considering my illness, I had refrained from going out to eat with him. However, one day, I finally gave in to his invitation and agreed to go out for a meal together. This place specializes in chicken noodle soup. I thought chicken noodle soup might be okay for you, Olivia. Plus, the restaurant has partitions, so we can relax without worrying about other people's eyes. He was aware of my illness and seemed to have made various considerations for me. Thanks to him, I was able to enjoy dining out in a relaxed manner for the first time in a long while. I'm seriously in love with you, Olivia. On the way back from the meal, Cedric said to me with a serious expression. What do you like about me? It's because you're calm, Olivia. I feel at ease when I'm with you. And sometimes, the smile you show me is so cute. That's why, please go out with me. I still remember the earnest expression Cedric had at that time. As he bowed deeply in front of me, I couldn't help but laugh. After that, we became a couple and, after dating for several years, got married when I was 29. And Cedric was 26. Our married life was smooth, and at 30, when my health was improving, I gave birth to our daughter Marcia. Cedric was overjoyed at Marcia's birth, but for some reason, he switched to part-time work shortly after I returned from maternity leave. What happened all of a sudden? Now that Olivia is back at work, I'll take care of Marcia. Leave the housework to me too, Cedric said with a smile, leaving me bewildered. I wasn't informed about his decision to work part-time. But what about the salary? Marcia has been born, and we'll need a lot of money from now on, won't we? If you work hard, that's all we need. That was the first time I felt a sense of distrust towards him. But with my personality, I couldn't argue strongly. Though Cedric declared he would do the housework, he had never done it before. Returning to work after maternity leave was tough, and I was anxious as I couldn't stay late for overtime. Still, he seemed to manage the housework somehow. When I came home tired from work, he would sometimes have dinner ready for me. He was particularly proactive in childcare, gladly taking on the task of dropping off and picking up Marcia from kindergarten. Even after his part-time work ended, he always left work on time to spend time with her. While I stayed late at work to save a little more for her future, my time with my family was limited. Cedric, when alone with Marcia, seemed happier than when he was with me. He would show her the full smiles he never showed me, even during our dating or early marriage. I should probably see it as endearing, but I felt somewhat left out and lonely. Despite my frequent overtime, our financial situation became tighter than before Marcia was born. Though we received child benefits, they weren't enough to cover everything. I needed to prepare for her upcoming school enrollment expenses. However, Cedric seemed not to care at all about our living expenses. He kept buying Marcia lots of toys and clothes, and when I asked him to cut back a little, "It's for her sake," he would retort, hardly listening to what I had to say. As for living expenses, I had no choice but to slowly dip into my savings. This situation continued for several years, and when Marcia started elementary school, she suddenly said to me, "I hate you," upon returning home one day. Marcia takes after Cedric both in looks and personality. She's bright and outspoken about her feelings. "Why?" I asked, and she replied with a look of disgust. "Because you're so skinny, you look like a skeleton." The shock of being ridiculed for my appearance was greater than my confusion, and I ended up getting angry at her. "How can you say such a thing?" When I scolded her, Cedric rushed over. There, Marcia, it must have been scary. What are you yelling for?" "She's just telling the truth." Instead of scolding her, he gently embraced her as she began to cry and blamed me, saying, "It's your fault." Cedric apparently already knew what had happened at school that day. It was her class observation day. We both attended, but now that I think about it, she seemed down since we returned home. What Cedric told me was appalling. After the class observation, Marcia was laughed at by her school friends, saying, "Marcia's mom looks like a ghost. She's disgustingly skinny. How would you feel if she starts being ignored at school because of you?" While hugging Marcia, Cedric scolded me. From that day on, Marcia's attitude towards me changed. Bright and active Marcia, resembling Cedric, and I, inherently shy, probably never really got along to begin with. As she grew older, she began to criticize my physique and personality more specifically. "I don't want to walk outside with you," she said. Cedric told me, "Don't come to school events or parent-teacher meetings anymore." I had no choice but to comply, missing not only sports day, but also the elementary school graduation, middle school, and high school entrance ceremonies, with Cedric attending alone. When Marcia became a high school student, her rebellious phase worsened, and her verbal abuse towards me intensified. Being ignored was the norm, and when we did talk, it was either to demand more allowance or end in insults. Lately, she often comes home late at night. This day too, she returned well after midnight. She dyed her hair adorned with multiple piercings. Her appearance was flashy, a far cry from her cuter days. "Marcia, coming home this late again. What on earth were you doing?" "Shut up! It's none of your business when I come back, is it?" Even as I called out from the living room, Marcia didn't listen and locked herself in her room. On another day, the school contacted me about her attitude. "You left school early today without telling any of the teachers, and it's already midnight. Where have you been all this time?" "It's none of your business. You're always so annoying." I've tried to have discussions with her numerous times, but she would scoff at my firm attitude as if it were ridiculous and completely ignore what I said. Then Cedric would intervene. "Dad, help! She's being so annoying. I've been asking for more allowance lately, but she's not listening at all." "Don't bother with her, Marcia. Dad will give you your allowance." Pointed at by the two of them, I was starkly reminded that I was not being treated as part of the family by them. He said he would give her allowance, but the source of that money was ultimately me. Cedric, who always readily buys whatever Marcia wants and has almost no savings, would later come to me asking for money. That day, I quietly cried in my room. No matter what I said, it didn't reach her heart, and Cedric also seemed to think of me as a nuisance. Where had the kind him, who used to be considerate towards me, gone? Or had he always secretly despised me from the moment we met? Doubting them both, I began to fear eating again. I had reached my limit. Unable to bear it any longer, I decided I would leave the house soon. But with almost no savings left, what would I do after leaving? The next day, while working with thoughts of the future lingering in the back of my mind, my boss Dylan approached me. "Olivia, isn't it about time for a break? Can I have a word?" As I was just about to take a break, I said yes, stood up from my seat, and followed Dylan to the break room. As soon as we sat down in the break room, Dylan, with a serious look on his face, asked, "Is something wrong? You seem down, and your complexion isn't great." "I'm here to listen, if you're okay with it." Dylan offered kind words. I decided to consult him about my home situation. "Actually, I have something I'd like to discuss. It's hard to talk about at work, so could we possibly meet on my next day off?" Dylan readily agreed. He's someone I trust the most, having taken great care of me since I was a new graduate. When I joined the company, he was a manager, but now he's risen to the director of human resources. When I visited Dylan's house on a weekend afternoon, his wife Lily was also there, and I told them both about them. Recalling the treatment I had received made me cry, and by the end, I couldn't stop sobbing. "I had no idea your home situation was like that. Why didn't you talk to us sooner?" Lily said, tears in her eyes, as she gently embraced me. I had always wanted their help, but didn't want to bother them, so I never spoke up. "You helped me out in the past. I want to help you in your time of need. I'll do whatever I can to support you," Dylan said with a pained look, yet nodded firmly. There had been a time when the company was involved in a scandal, and he was wrongfully suspected of being involved. But the real culprit was someone else, and he was innocent. I had quickly realized his innocence and, despite being new, reported it to the higher-ups. As a result, the company underwent an audit, and his innocence was safely proven. This incident led me to frequently visit his home, becoming close friends with his wife, Lily, and now we share a strong bond of trust. "I didn't know Cedric was such a terrible person. I'm sorry for not noticing." Dylan apologized, and I shook my head. Cedric's attitude at work hadn't changed since he was a newcomer, but Dylan had felt suspicious when Cedric requested part-time work after my maternity leave.
You should divorce such a man immediately.
Right. Olivia, you've lost weight again, haven't you? It's best if you leave the house as soon as possible. Dylan and his wife advised me, and also offered. After the separation, you should stay at our house for a while. Living in a single-family home, they were alone since their children had moved out. And they said they had a spare room. I couldn't stop my tears at their kindness. With their generous support, I solidified my decision to divorce. Furthermore, he suggested that some sort of sanctions should be imposed on Cedric and Marcia. Asked if there was any leverage I might have, I pondered for a while.
Come to think of it, wasn't there a rumor about Cedric having an affair at the company a while back?
This was something Cedric didn't know. Indeed, there were rumors of him having an affair with someone from the company. He had begun to spend more time away from home since Marcia entered middle school. He often went out on weekends and didn't return until the next day, a pattern that continues today. Furthermore, Marcia often came home late at night. She frequently skipped school to go somewhere, and I had always been curious about what she was doing and where she was. At Dylan's suggestion, I hired a detective to investigate their actions. Thoroughly investigated by the detective, we first obtained several pieces of evidence of Cedric's affair. The affair partner was indeed a colleague, a woman in her late 20s. Photos of them entering her home hand in hand and leaving a hotel together. I now have undeniable proof in my hands. Learning of the affair didn't shock me. Instead, I realized my feelings for Cedric had cooled. The investigation also revealed Marcia's behavior outside school, showing she only attended school about 12 days a month and was hanging out with bad company every night until late. Realizing she was beyond my control, I secretly started preparations for her transfer to a strict school in the countryside without her knowing. The school had a dormitory, and students couldn't leave without submitting a leave request, even on holidays. Students with issues were not allowed to submit such requests. I also got a referral from Dylan to a lawyer to prepare for the divorce and compensation claims. Exactly 1 month after consulting the Dylans, I returned home from the lawyer's office to find Cedric and Marcia unusually at home. When I entered the living room, they ignored me as if I were invisible, laughing and watching TV. Suddenly, Marcia turned around. Wow! You were here? I totally didn't notice. Always like a ghost. Laughing, Marcia pointed her mobile phone at me. A few seconds later, the sound of the shutter confirmed she had taken a picture.
Dad, look! I got a ghost picture. Wow! Really? It's a good shot,
Cedric said with a faint smile, looking at me. Hey, ghost. Say something.
Ghosts can't talk, you know. That's true.
The two of them enjoyed making fun of me. After a good laugh, Cedric looked at me with cold eyes. You're really a downer. Get lost, you're annoying. Joining in Cedric's insult, Marcia also said,
Disappear quickly.
I no longer felt sad or angry. It all seemed so ridiculous, I began to laugh. As I shook with laughter, Cedric and Marcia looked at me with utter disgust.
What are you laughing at alone?
Creepy.
Can't you just go away?
Faced with their disdain, I clearly said with a smile.
All right then. As you wish, I'll disappear.
That night, without telling them anything, I left the house, abandoning all household chores. While consulting with the lawyer about the divorce and compensation, I also slowly proceeded with the moving preparations. And today, finally, all the preparations were complete. After leaving, I took advantage of the generosity of Dylan and his wife to stay with them temporarily and immediately contacted Marcia's school. Reporting all of her problematic behaviors resulted in her being expelled. However, not wanting to be a dropout, we arranged for her to transfer to a strict school with a dormitory, which I had prepared as a relief measure. Marcia reluctantly agreed when I said, "Then, stay a dropout. She will have to undergo strict discipline at the new school, which might reform her from the ground up. If Marcia returns without reforming, I plan to truly cut ties with her." Later, Cedric, furious about her sudden transfer, called me.
What have you done? Marcia was crying, you know? It's okay for her to cry once in a while. I've been crying alone for over 10 years.
I replied calmly and immediately brought up the divorce. When I mentioned that I had evidence of his affair, Cedric remained silent, unable to retort. The next day, with Dylan accompanying me, I met Cedric directly and presented him with the divorce papers along with the evidence of his affair.
You'll be paying a substantial amount in compensation. Not just for the affair, but also for the mental anguish you've caused me all these years.
With Dylan present, Cedric couldn't respond strongly and merely grimaced in frustration. After the divorce was finalized, Cedric, having almost no savings, had to borrow money to pay me the compensation. I also demanded compensation from his affair partner. Thanks to Dylan's arrangements, he was demoted at work and transferred to a different region. The affair partner was also moved to a completely different location. Since the expenses related to the divorce exceeded my savings, I sold the house where our family lived, using the profits to cover the costs. I had no sad feelings about letting go of the house, as there were hardly any good memories associated with it. Afterward, I rented a room close to my workplace. My life now is peaceful, with occasional visits from Dylan and his wife or my colleagues from work, making for a joyful existence. Most importantly, everything I eat tastes delicious. That, more than anything, signifies my happiness.